Hi guys, I wanted to share some weather history with you, something I looked at quite some time ago from the tireless research from those guys at TruthStream Media. I'm sure many of you are already subscribed to their channel. I'll put a link to it in the description. I hope you'll go over there and check out their channel. But I wanted to delve into it a little bit more and see what else we can see. It's time to awaken the Ewok. Let's begin. Since February 1947, 6 members of the Physical Studies Group of the General Electric Research Laboratory have been participating in a research project related to basic problems in cloud physics. This project has had the joint sponsorship of the Army Signal Corps, the Office of Naval Research, and the Air Forces, the Signal Corps having assumed the active contract negotiation, which resulted in the establishment of contract blah 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 blah. And then it goes on to say, for more than 4 years previous to the above date, a considerable amount of research was conducted by some of this group in the field of production of artificial fogs, precipitation static, and the icing of aircraft. This was done partly under the government sponsorship through NDRC, Army Chemical Corps. So it clearly shows this has been going on since 1943 as an ongoing project, with lots of the people involved, lots of the chemicals involved, and the mad wizardry they use to try and replicate Mother Nature. And this has obviously been documented by the newspapers for so long. They come out, they say they're going to do it, then they deny that they're going to do it, and then they say, oh yeah, well we did do it, but you know, it's all for good, it's all for good. I spent so many hours thinking, why did our grandparents just sit back and do nothing about this information? It was clearly there, but they didn't. What they did has been hidden from us. They did start suing the government. They told them to stop doing it. Now we've got to start doing the same. We can't just sit back and just do nothing while they continually engineer the climate, which we obviously know that they've been doing it for a long time. That this propaganda goes so deep, it's ridiculous. This sort of thing that they've obviously shown, we can make your winters milder. Yes. Okay, well where are the milder winters? This is all just a great big show. Just pause the video just long enough for you to read it. I don't want to sit there and bore you to tears with reading all these different methods of the way they can cut the clouds and totally white the sky out and then cut a great big line through it so you can see blue sky above. And it's what we are seeing today in our skies. We just don't understand exactly what it is and how it's being caused. But they've known for a long time, and they've known the purpose, they've known the outcome. That project for a new American century, they've known all this stuff. They're weapons against the population. And then they have to bring out this fake enemy, the Reds, the Russians, the Cold War. Oh yeah, there's a Cold War, but I don't think it's the Cold War that we think. It's not the one that we are led to believe. The cold is coming, winter is coming. Oh, they love their titles. It's crazy. But if you've read Agenda 21, then you're quite used to it by now. Move on to something a little bit more recent. The pathological history of weather and climate modification, 3 cycles of promise and hype. This is quite an interesting part of this document. We have already experienced 2 major cycles of promise and hype in the history of weather modification, and they have both demonstrated large-scale pathological features. The first cycle initiated by James Eps's speculative proposal in the 1830s to enhance precipitation by lighting huge fires, thus simulating convective updrafts, preceded the pseudo-scientific hype of the Western rainmakers or so-called pluviculturalists. The second cycle, dating in the 1940s, began with the promising discoveries in the cloud seeding by Irving Langmuir, here he is again, and his associates at the General Electric Corporation, but rapidly devolved into a suite of unsupportable claims by cold warriors and again Western rainmakers. A third cycle has begun recently. In October 2003, the US National Research Council issued a report titled Critical Issues in Weather Modification Research. In the same month, the US Pentagon released a controversial report, an abrupt climate change scenario and its implications for United States national security, that explored how global warming could lead to rapid and catastrophic global cooling. Only 3 months later, in January 2004, a symposium on macroengineering. I didn't screenshot the rest of it, but I'm sure you can go and find it. But link all this together. Forest fires, volcanoes, geoengineering, and a grand solar minimum. Join the dots, my friends, join the dots. The UN and Harvard's global sun-dimming experiment that began almost exactly a year ago is just a big lie. It's been going on for too long. And you may recognise this document. I'll put it actually on a previous video. I won't read all of it. You can read it as it highlights part of it. As it highlights each part, sorry. Showing there more psyops of the carbon dioxide. And then we get onto this. I'm not going to read the highlighted part. I'm going to read the part that says, start now to make control of weather equal in scope to the Manhattan District project, which produced the first A-bomb. And what do people often say? If they were doing it, we would know. They couldn't hide that for all these years. Yeah, well, now we know. It's there. It's out in the open. There's no hiding it. It's there. Another few screenshots you can pause and look into. I've already looked for the connection for Vannevar Bush and the Bush family. They've tried to say there isn't a connection, but I think there is a slight connection. 15th, 16th cousins removed. The Bushes were very, very heavily involved in World War II. Then we get to the major proving ground. After Project Cumulus, Project Cirrus and Project Storm Fury, we are into Asia with Project Popeye. I think most of us know the details of Project Popeye, but look at some of these figures. 2,600 cloud seeding sorties, 47,000 silver iodide flares, and that doesn't even mention Agent Orange. We all know the effects of the devastation they caused over there. It was just, they're still feeling the ramifications of a countrywide poisoning in the name of war. It's absolutely shocking. They hide all of these things under different names, But later on they allow us to see the truth, and then they twist it all round and, oh, we don't have the technology for that. It's not really possible. Yet we're going to show you this on the weather page. But your general day-to-day forecast is still going to be 95% incorrect. We are just mad scientists playing with ridiculous theories, and we don't really know what the hell we are doing. And when these people are called to account, they just claim plausible deniability. It's the easiest way out of it. They just use swings and roundabouts, but as it says, it's quite obvious what they really mean. Others are engaging even in an eco-type of terrorism, whereby they can alter the climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. So there are plenty of ingenious minds out there that are at work finding ways in which they can wreak terror upon other nations. It's real, and that's the reason why we have to intensify our efforts, and that's why this is so important. You can pause it and read a little bit more, but it says also, there are some reports, for example, that some countries have been trying to construct something like the Ebola virus, and that would be a very dangerous phenomenon, to say the least. Some crazy wizards in their laboratories trying to devise certain types of pathogens that would be ethnic specific, so they could just eliminate certain ethnic groups and races, and others are designing some sort of engineering, some sort of insects that can destroy specific crops. So I think it's fairly obvious to say that this is no experiment. This is nothing to do with climate change. This is full-on climate engineering. This is owning the weather. This is owning the sun. This is one of the last chains of global governance. We've got to break these chains. They're not hidden anymore. We don't have to stay shackled to the system. Let's be free. It's time to be free.